I want Eris!
Honey, we already have Eris at home.
Mushoku Tensei is back! This is one of my most looked forward to series coming back because I always love the art styles and general production of the series. So, jumping right back in, I'm really glad to see that Rudy is still annoying as ever. I've always loved how our main character has a rich and detailed personality. In this episode, he talked about collaring Eris, which is always fun to hear when Rudy does or says something disturbing. You know, boys will be boys, lol, rafflecopter woot. Anyways, besides the sarcasm, this episode of Mushoku Tensei was really damn solid. It feels like a nice continuation from episode 11, and I'm glad this was our first episode back because we were introduced to two new characters, hopefully I can say this good, Kishirika Kishirisu and Gallus Cleaner. But, guys, come on now. We gotta talk about Kishirika, the great emperor of the demon world, meets Rudy in this episode, and that's thanks to the tip of Hitogami. After being resurrected for the first time in 300 years, she's on the verge of perishing due to not having any food. Though Rudy has her covered. Because he saved her life, he gets one wish, but instead gets one of her eyes in return. From this, he gains the Eye of Foresight. My reaction to this is that it makes Rudy overall a much more interesting character. This is because the eye itself can either help or harm Rudy in any given scenario. While we focused on how the eye has helped Rudy in this episode, for example in his sparring match with Eris, and as well helping Gallus from receiving a pot to the head, which may not be as bad if you're a pothead. Oh, terrible jokes. There are many ways this eye could actually harm him in some experiences. Because of that duality, Rudy's eye makes every scenario much more unique and much more interesting. At the end of the episode, Rudy feels as though he has to sell the staff that Eris has made and gave him. Well, what I actually find interesting could be that if Rudy starts gambling or setting up games and bets that play into Rudy's powerful Eye of Foresight. I mean, think about it, he could very easily just rig a game and get easy and quick money. While the eye is extremely useful in combat, especially for someone weak at close range like Rudy, there is much more to gain from his eye than just surviving in battle. As for Kishirika herself in this episode, she seems to be a fine character. Much like every character in Mushoku Tensei thus far, her facial expressions are something to die for with these gorgeous and cartoonish, overly expressive expressions. As for a character, or well, I should say as a person, she's not that well put together, maybe a little too brash, is evident when she leaves Rudy. She seems to stumble somewhat, maybe literally. But based on what was said later by Ruijerd, Kishirika is rumored to actually conceal 12 demon eyes within her body. This is likely true, as not only does Rudy have one of those very eyes, but as well we literally see them like a slot machine in one scene of the episode. So I wonder just what those eyes are and how powerful their abilities can be. As well, if someone like Ruijerd has heard of Kishirika before, then she's obviously not just this cartoonish character, but someone who is likely to be more important to the plot, which is obvious. She's in the cover of the season 2, so duh. As for Gallus Cleaner, my theory on his character is that while he seems to be somewhat of an asshole, he likely is a master of living life in a city like this. Based on his outfit and demeanor alone, I'd guess that this guy is either great at selling, has insane connections, or is a powerful businessman, or maybe all the above. Because of this, I bet that Gallus will inevitably help out Rudy because of how he was able to save Gallus from the pot, from becoming a pothead. Much like with the Kishirika situation, Gallus likely feels he owes Rudy something. That being said, Gallus seems smarter than that, and it's likely he has more plans for Rudy, as he probably can see this kid can take him far and has a good use for him. In other words, it's one of those, you scratch my back, I plot to scratch your back so that I may further use you to get towards my goals. At least that's how I think the saying goes. I mean, what do I know? But what I do know is that Eris continues to be the fine wine of this series. What I mean by that is initially Eris was quite an annoying and abrasive person in the series. She's a tsundere after all, and because of that, it's a fair assessment and opinion to have. But it feels like the series is making Eris's character head in a much more interesting direction than I ever expected, and thus she's become a real highlight of this series, and especially this episode. Sparring with Rudy to test test out his new Eye of Foresight, she is beaten, but in the end, tries to fool Rudy only for her to still be outplayed. This leads to her stomping off in anger, but this is actually consistent with her character. In the past, we always knew that Eris was a sore loser, and typically it was for the reason that she was pampered and coddled much of her life. Now that she's out traveling with Rudy, she's learning and growing into quite a fine young lady. This is because Eris expresses a sentiment that she really wanted to grow up and catch up to Rudy and his abilities. What this scene proves is that Eris isn't Eris any longer. She's growing up and is mad not because she has to face a reality outside of her own world, but now because she realizes how far behind she is to Rudy and how much that fuels her to keep striving to get better. Sure, she's still a sore loser, but now Eris has something to prove. What's even more unique here is that Rudy points out to Eris that she was able to land a hit on Ruijerd, which is something Rudy couldn't do despite being able to literally see into the future. Now sure, you could say that was a fluke, that Eris landed that hit because of Roxy's presence distracting him. At the same time, it was Ruijerd's fault for looking, and this was a legit sparring match between two competitors, so in my mind, Ruijerd took his eye off the ball and he lost fair and square. Though I guess I'm digressing a little bit, but the point I'm really trying to make here is that Eris sees Rudy as her ultimate goal. Even though Ruijerd is extremely powerful, it pales into comparison to that of Rudy, at least in her eyes, because she obviously sees him as someone to look up to, and someone she treats with complete respect, at least in her own way of showing it. This is what we'd call Eris's cute side. Her dere side. Speaking of tsundere, my fridge is being a total tsundere. There's like nothing to eat in here. I guess I could just use some of the street taco sauce on this wheat wrap here and call it a day. Though on Rudy's side of this, it's just as unique. While he is happy he's now gained this power of foresight, there is just one issue. Maybe two. Not only are they broke and Rudy may be selling Eris' staff, but he feels guilty over beating Eris. Rudy sees this as something unnecessary in the grand scheme of his plan to return Eris home. The issue here, though, is that Rudy's actions may have hurt Eris in the short term, but in terms of the long term, it will allow her to use this as motivation to further grow and become more powerful. In the end, this moment should actually strengthen their relationship, but that isn't all. To sell the staff or not. To throw away a symbol of this relationship in order to survive in the short term, or keep it and tough it out. This is not an easy answer, and that really goes for anyone. Ruijerd takes issue with this, and I believe him to be right in this scenario. Why throw away this symbol of gratitude and respect, something that bonds them together? He learned a lot from Rudy how to grow as a person and understand himself better, which is something that you don't take for granted. Because at the end of the day, money is money, but love and respect are something more important than that. Rudy gave Ruijerd something that completely changed his life for the better, and thus, I agree with Ruijerd in not allowing him to sell that staff. But if the make sell a kidney because this baka bitch little fridge has shown me nothing but disrespect. Did you enjoy this video? I'm glad you did. So while we wait for next week's episode, check out this video on 86's most recent episode, and as well be sure to hashtag support the SeaTactics by becoming a channel member or Patreon to get your name on the wall of SeaTactics. Bye-bye.